Was Jesus mindful of human inequality? Did he think at all about this human issue about which all of us are really exercised? We dream of a system in which people are free and there is equality among human beings, at least equality of opportunities, and there is a sense of belonging together, fraternity. Therefore, the immortal slogan that the French Revolution generated: liberty, equality, fraternity. Surely, equality is a spiritual issue. It's also a social issue, besides being a political issue. We know that the health and cohesion of a society will be seriously undermined if it gets seriously riddled with inequality. Inequality also aggravates injustice in a society. So there are multiple issues. So, an issue of this ramification, an issue of this multiple resonances, cannot be outside the purview of spirituality because, in my opinion, spirituality involves an integrated, comprehensive, and holistic vision of life, and therefore nothing is really excluded from its purview. Though, at the popular level, many people think that the scope of spirituality is very narrow and it is limited to a few designated concerns, experiences, and possibilities. Therefore, let's now briefly consider Jesus and the challenge of inequality, or Jesus' insight into inequality. I'm not proposing to undertake here a comprehensive survey of all aspects of this issue. All I intend to do is to provide a starting point, hopefully an interesting starting point, based on a particular parable with which all of us are familiar, at least most people are familiar. That's the parable of the talents. Now, an important aspect of this parable is Jesus' recognition of the reality of inequality. In this parable, the master calls 3 servants. To one, he gives 5 talents. To the second, he gives 2 talents. To the third, he gives only 1 talent. So the master creates inequality, at least it would seem so. Maybe the master had a realistic understanding of the capacities of his 3 servants, and therefore he thought that the maximum that the first servant could handle was 5 talents, the maximum the second could handle was 2 talents, and the third talent could only handle at best 1 talent. And therefore, it may not be a question of the master creating inequalities. Rather, it may well be a question of the master being kind and compassionate, realistic as well, in entrusting certain responsibilities and opening up certain possibilities before his servants. What's the point in entrusting 5 talents to a person who cannot even handle 1? And if a master entrusts 5 talents to a servant who cannot handle even 1 talent, he's not doing him a favor. He's actually doing him an injustice, a disservice. However, that is not my main concern. Here, let's stick to the theme of equality and inequality. Now, here, Jesus is being realistic in recognizing and making us aware of the fact through this parable that we are living in a world of inequalities. Nature is a realm of inequality. Society is characterized by inequality. And everything that we see around us is touched by this problem. So, inequality is the given. But the story doesn't end there. And that is precisely what we need to be clear about. Having entrusted the talents to the servants, the master then goes away. That is the parabolic way of saying that the master gives his servants total, unmodulated or unfettered freedom to do whatever they liked, whatever they pleased with the talents entrusted to them. So now there are two factors to take into account. One is the talents entrusted to them, which are of varying quantities. Second is total freedom, which is absolutely equal. All the three servants are equal in the freedom given to them to exercise the talents, though you might well argue in a casuistic form, you might well argue that the scope of freedom could also be influenced by the quantity of the talents. So presumably, the servant who is given 5 talents would have more freedom as compared to the one who got 2 talents, or far greater in relation to the one who got only 1 talent. But I believe that this is only an argument for the sake of argument. There is no suggestion, at least in the text of the parable, that the servants were in any way constrained by the conditions within which the talents were entrusted to them. If at all there were limiting conditions, those conditions were innate in them as individuals. So there was no restricting condition either imposed by the master who gave them the talents, or by the circumstances or the context in which they were entrusted the servants, the talents. If at all there were some limitations, these limitations inhered in, or they were operative within these individuals. So that is a possibility that I cannot discount. But what I want to emphasize is this. If we go by the logic of the parable, it clearly implies that the 3 servants were totally free to do as they pleased with the talents entrusted to them. And then what happens? Because of the way they exercise their freedom, and I would like to believe that they were equally free, because there were no limiting conditions, no prescriptions attached to what they could do with the talents. The master did not say, you should use it only in this manner or that manner. You should use it only for this purpose or that purpose, or employ the talents only in one part of the city, not in another. No such conditions. He gives them the talents and he goes away, creating a realm of total freedom for them to exercise those talents and to gain whatever may be gained through meaningful application of the talents. So therefore, the important thing to note here, and this is an insight of immense practical importance, and I commend this particularly to the young people, what happens here is that the original inequality is aggravated by the way the individuals use their freedom. In fact, if you look at the third servant, he can see only the freedom to not exert himself, the freedom to not use the talent entrusted to him. Talents are entrusted not that they may constitute some kind of static or lifeless possessions. All talents entrusted to us are catalysts for us to act, to employ, to apply, and to multiply. In other words, talents become the medium through which we express ourselves, express our personal qualities, our characteristics, our capacities, etc. And it is in expressing our potentialities, possibilities, character traits, hallmarks that we need freedom. Freedom in the abstract is of no use to human beings. Freedom is rendered meaningful when it's used to bring out the latent potentialities in each one of us. And the ultimate meaning of this parable is that God has invested in each one of us whatever it takes to express the best part of our possibilities to the uttermost. Not everyone is alike. Not all people are alike, either in their potentialities or in their outlooks or in their circumstances or the advantages that they enjoy at the starting point, because that's how the world is organized. Rather than sit and complain about it and waste a lifetime grumbling, the only sensible thing to do is to use whatever talents are given to us together with the freedom of action, freedom of enterprise, if you like, to enter into the fullness of the possibilities that these talents embody, so that over a period of time, we are in a position to mitigate the inequalities with which we begin our life. Now, for example, when I look back on my life, I had to face serious, very serious disabilities, deprivations, hindrances, challenges. Heavy odds were stacked against me. And as a little boy, when I regarded my situation and my possibilities, I thought that, I had very little scope in life. But somehow a spark of hope was born in me, that if I exercise my latent potentialities, whatever they be, and my mother played a big role in sustaining my self-belief that there was something of value within me. And therefore I came to the conclusion that if I did justice to these inner possibilities, a day will come when I will be able to transcend the otherwise overwhelming odds that seem to be stacked against me. It turned out to be true. So the insight that I'm sharing with you has its roots in my own experience. Suppose I had taken the opposite attitude, namely, I could have harbored grudges against God and spent all my lifetime complaining about God's injustice and cursed my plight and constantly wondered why I was born in this kind of situation, why I was not born with a silver spoon in the mouth, so on and so forth. I would have been utterly miserable. I would have been a thorough flop. And I would not have been sitting here sharing these thoughts with you. So the insight that I'm sharing with you, I believe, is a very powerful one from a practical point of view. The only sensible thing to do is to enter fully into the possibilities comprehended in or latent in the situation that each one of us finds ourselves in. Doing our very best, trusting in the larger justice of life, and if you like me to put it in religious language, trusting in the unfailing faithfulness of God, that someday the situation will change. Someday a new dawn will come. Someday things are going to be very different. That life will reward you, irrespective of everything that seems to be black and somber at the present time. There would be laughter and sunshine someday in your life. And To reach that stage, the important thing is to understand the purpose of our freedom. Freedom is not an empty word. Freedom is a challenge. Freedom is an invitation. Freedom is an empowerment. The positive empowerment that freedom entails is the power to discover and apply whatever talents are invested in our person and personality, to develop them to the uttermost, so that they become not only our private possessions, means of personal enrichment, but also they become more than that, the credible, authentic expressions of our gratitude to God, who is our maker. And from a religious point of view, the basic assumption is that every gift, every good and perfect gift comes from God. And therefore, the only way we can express our gratitude to God, the way we prove our faithfulness to God, is by exercising whatever talents, big or small, great or little, flamboyant or otherwise, whatever talents are entrusted to us to the uttermost, with great excitement, with passion, with enthusiasm, with undying application of all the energies and possibilities given to us. And if we do that, first of all, we will be delivered of the tendency and the temptation to grumble. Secondly, we will be delivered from the dark dungeon of negativity. But on the more positive side, we'll progress from a situation of comparative deprivation and disadvantage to higher and higher stages of freedom and achievement. And that also enables us to relate much better to the context in which we are. And the ultimate product will be that our life could also be a blessing to many others around us. That is a blessed state that Jesus means when he refers to the fruitfulness of the life that each one of us is duty bound to attain. He says, be fruitful. He says, if you abide in me and I in you, you will be fruitful. When God abides in us and we abide in him, if at all you believe in God, what happens is that we become able to understand and exercise our freedom in the most constructive and meaningful fashion. And it is when the gifts are conjoined with a creative and meaningful application of freedom that very blessed results eventuate from that combination. And that is a secret of happiness in life, of fulfillment in life. And I believe that that's certainly an important aspect of attaining life in all its fullness, which Jesus identified as the overall, overarching purpose of his mission itself. The 10th verse of the 10th chapter of John's Gospel, Jesus says, I've come that they may have life and life in all its fullness. So the inequality embedded in the circumstances of life with which we begin need not constitute a permanent setback. Rather, God in his justice and mercy has invested in each one of us enough talents, enough possibilities and potentialities, which if we use it through a meaningful and constructive, positive application of the gift of freedom given to us, we will be able to use as the means by which we transcend the limitations of life that with which we begin. We will not stay stuck at the beginning. We will ascend to higher and higher levels of action, of experience, of achievement, and of personal fulfillment. But this personal fulfillment, to the extent that it is spiritual, will not be selfish, self-centered, or individualistic achievement alone. It also will have tremendous, transformative, beneficial effects on those around us, which, as I said a short while ago, is included in the meaning of being fruitful in our life, which is the authentic hallmark of leading a spiritually healthy or wholesome life. Thank you. All the very best.